Hello and welcome to Cycles of Time, your weekly guide to what's happening on Earth as we make our revolutionary journey around the sun. For time immemorial, our human ancestors have created myths and meanings to help us adapt and thrive as seasons change. Join me each week to explore the intersections of these ancient cycles, from the indigenous medicine wheel to the pagan wheel of the year, the Babylonian and Greek zodiac to the I Ching, the ancient Chinese book of changes. I'm your host, Alison Dale, and this is the Cycles of Time podcast. Hello, everyone. Welcome to your weekly forecast for the week of August 26th to September 1st, 2024. Wow, September already. Woo! Virgo season is in full effect this week, and for me, the energy shift between the fixed fire sign of Leo and the mutable earth sign of the Virgin is really palpable. I'm wondering how everyone's transitional week from Leo to Virgo went last week. For me, it was definitely feeling like a homecoming because I'm a Virgo sun, and next week you'll get to hear all about my birthday gate, which is gate 64, the gate of confusion or imagination, to use another word. And so I do have a bunch of Leo placements, as you heard me talking about over the past month, probably. And so I do have a deep love for Leo and the self-expression and artistry and this summer season and the adventurous spirit and all of that. But I do always find my body relaxing and grounding as soon as Virgo season arrives. There's just kind of a settling that's like, oh, I'm comfortable here. It's been interesting to hear some of the people I've interviewed on this show so far talk about the season they were born in and how they resonate with that in their bodies. It's just makes sense, your first weeks and months on this planet out of the womb being in a specific season, and whatever weather is included in that season, it just seems that it would make sense that developmentally we'd feel comfortable in that season. I'm curious if that's true for you. Definitely for me, love this time of year, especially here in New Mexico. It's just golden flowers everywhere and just beautiful quality of light. I didn't always love being a Virgo. When I only knew about being a Virgo and not all of the different planetary placements and complexities of the chart, but being labeled as a Virgo early on, I remember my mom being like, "You're a Virgo. When you were born, I heard you were a Virgo. I thought you'd be a lot cleaner." And as she's picking up like wet towels off my floor in high school, hi Mom, if you're hearing this, I feel you. Having a kid now, picking up all the stuff, I get it. But at that time, she was like, "Oh yeah, your Virgo is supposed to make you more tidy." And my daughter's a Virgo rising, and sometimes I see that tidy and organized stereotype show up in her, but most of the time it's a mess. So anyway, that was one of my first associations. And, I think that over time, it does get a bad rap and kind of an association with being nitpicky and tidy and fastidious and clean. But I feel like as I've gotten older and done a lot of research into Virgo as a archetype and the history of Virgo and what that actually means, and meant back in Greece and before that, in Babylon, I think that there's so much more to Virgo than what is seen on the surface. And I feel like as I've gotten older, I also feel just more and more aligned with the deeper qualities of the sign. I think it's all about framing and just the words that we use and the associations that are with those words. So for me, organized feels better than tidy, and I do love organizing, feel organized. And when I started thinking of myself as discerning, which is a skill that's needed in harvest season to sort ripe from rotten, and using discerning rather than nitpicky, I think I was able to embrace that quality in myself a lot more. And so it's all about just how we feel around the words that we use when we're describing these signs. So there's an astrologer that I really love named Britton LaRue who has done a whole series called Unshaming the Signs. And in this series, it's kind of like, I think she does some workshops and then also has just a lot of audio content and content about it on Instagram. But she reframes the stereotypes of each zodiac sign and welcomes the people who are involved to think about the gifts of the archetypes in deeper ways than, you know, the kind of stereotypical words that we've been conditioned with pop astrology. And so I recommend checking her out. I just love that concept of unshaming and figuring out where we have this hidden shame that's not even really talked about surrounding our Virgo or our Leo being to this or to that. And so, yeah, it's really cool. She also came to the world of astrology later in her life, in her late 30s, after an academic career, and got a lot of side-eye from people in her community, I guess. And so hearing her story makes me feel really resonant, as I've also kind of come to this path later on in life. And so I resonate with her spirit, and this unshaming work she's doing is really awesome. I think that, you know, astrology can feel reductionistic at first glance, and that's a lot of people's qualms with it, is just that it's, you know, how could everybody in this born in a certain month have these certain qualities? But for me, I think it's that in itself is an opportunity to be creative with how we define words and think about qualities of life and qualities of being human. It's like critical thinking on a personal level. And I think that's just a huge appeal of all of these systems of divination and personality analysis for me, is to not only think in my brain about the qualities of my birth season or the signs or the gates, but to feel them in my body over time and have a framework that is widely used and able to be used in discussion while doing this, while feeling into this process of who I am. Am I? What do I relate with? So I think that, yeah, that's an opportunity rather than a criticism of the art. The ability to discern, which is a Virgo quality, is super important in the work of astrology and all of these divination and personality analysis systems, not to mention the world at large. I'd say that in this day and age, it's super important to be discerning. And that word to me rises to the top for Virgoan energy. There was an article I read recently by Gianna Kadlik, and I think that she got it right in her last post that said, in an era of widespread disinformation, misinformation, fake news, and plummeting media literacy, cultivating the skill of discernment is more important than ever. I like how the Cambridge Dictionary defines discernment: the ability to judge people and things well. Discernment is built on a foundation of self-trust, on the ability to trust your own mind and experience, as well as an awareness of your own, perhaps not always great tendencies. Self-trust means not unilaterally ceding authority over your life to a teacher or a practice. It means being able to say no. And yeah, Gianna she writes a Substack called Astrology for Writers, and it's really good. So I recommend her as well. Lots of name drops and references in this one. There's so many people in this community doing really great work, so check them out. Speaking of stereotypes, and qualities of a sign, the title of this episode is Very Intimate, Very Liberated, and this is a riff on the insanely popular, very demure, very mindful meme that has just absolutely taken social media by storm over the past few weeks. For those of you who haven't seen the word demure everywhere, you've probably just been in a cave, because it's not only on social media, but it's in news headlines. President Biden has used it. It's NASA's used it. It's just like the word demure is absolutely everywhere. And it originates from a TikTok influencer named Jules LeBron, who created a video that has gone super viral, with like over 50 million views in the past couple of weeks. And it's basically, her talking about doing makeup for work. She goes, "So you see how I do my makeup at work? Very demure, very mindful. I don't do too much. I don't look like a clown. I'm very mindful when I'm at work, looking very presentable." And she says, "The way that I came to the interview is the way I go to the job." And so it's one of these things that like just took off in this crazy way that memes can take off these days. And Biden was talking about student loan debt relief and put very demure, very mindful in there. And so, whoever the social media team is for the politicians these days is definitely getting in with these trends in a big way. And the word demure is kind of opposition to being brat, which is the other big meme of the summer, the lime green meme that has influenced Kamala Harris's campaign. And for those of you who don't know about that one, Brat is the name of an album by the pop artist Charlie XCX, which is a term that's all about embracing your imperfections and being your messy and perhaps volatile and radically authentic self. And so Charlie XCX tweeted, "Kamala is Brat," a couple months ago. And then the Harris campaign took that and ran with it, putting lime green color schemes on her social media pages and marketing to successfully appeal to Gen Z voters. And so we have this like brat versus demure thing going on right now. There was a influencer named Emily Zwicker in an article that I read who said, "Essentially, to be demure is to be reserved or not brat. Neat and tidy handwriting? Demure. Cute outfit? Demure. Going out and partying with your friends every weekend? Brat." So I'm kind of obsessed with Gen Z slang and memes these days because it's just so good. But that gives a little insight into what's going on in politics, if you don't know about it. But for me, I think seeing the words demure and mindful just everywhere lately, leading up to Virgo season, has been really interesting because as they float around and I just keep seeing these words, an image of Virgo definitely does come to mind, because it's a sign that is known for being put together and somewhat modest and a little shy, and also oftentimes into mindfulness practices from the Virgos that I've known in my past. And there's also something about those specific words that don't quite sit well with me as they gain in popularity, though. And I think that having this polarity between this idea of authentic brat versus kind of presentable demure, it's really interesting to be in the culture right now. And in thinking about these qualities of Virgo, it's definitely feels really up, because I do see Virgos as kind of demure. There's a certain tameness and prudishness that's associated with Virgo, but I do think that that's kind of short-sighted as far as the archetype goes. And I think that very intimate and very liberated is what I wanted to put in for Virgo, to sub in for demure and mindful, because of the first couple of gates of Virgo season, which we'll talk about here in just a minute, are about being liberated and about being, sexual and intimate. And there's a lot more I have to say about that, but I do see the Virgo, redefining the Virgin is a big theme kind of in the astrology community right now. And it just taps into all of the women's rights activism that's happening right now. And I think that all signs have qualities that are seen as shameful or that people typically have issues with. And I'm definitely particularly sensitive to the Virgo ones, because I think that the sign is very complex and nuanced, more so than the hypervigilant and prudish stereotypes claim her to be. So very intimate, very liberated. Stay tuned for a deep dive into that. And before we do, let's get into the forecast. This week's highlights, we have the first full week of Virgo season. And then Mercury, who is Virgo's ruler, is stationing direct on Wednesday, finally. We've been in a Mercury retrograde period for 3 weeks just about. And so this Wednesday we have Mercury stationing direct, and things will flow a lot smoother going forward, hopefully. In human design in the I Ching, from Monday to Wednesday of this week, we're still in the gate of sexuality, gate 59. And then from this Wednesday until next Tuesday, the sun's transiting into gate 40, which is the gate of aloneness. This week's themes are let's talk about sex, baby, and intimacy, and breaking down barriers to closeness. It's about sovereignty and being whole into oneself, intimacy with oneself. And it's about the inward reflections of the Hermit card in the tarot. So those are some themes we're working with: self-intimacy and intimacy with others. Our place in the Wheel of the Year is Medicine Wheel Direction of West, which represents water and adulthood, which I did kind of a deep dive into last week. The whooshing cycle of Earth, which aligns nicely with Virgo's Earth qualities. The pagan season of Lammas. The zodiac season of Virgo until the 22nd of September. The moon phase waning from that full moon we had last week. And that is the forecast. So before we jump in, I wanted to note that I have made an Instagram post for the 6 gates of Virgo season, the 6 human design gates of Virgo season. And I do this at the beginning of every zodiacal season, give a little insight into what the human design or I Ching gates are going to be for the season. So I've also written about that on astrosomatics.substack.com, where I send out every Monday a kind of blog format written transcript of this podcast. And so I'm not going to go through all of these in detail, but I do include the gate number, the I Ching hexagram, the human design gate name, and also the gene keys interpretation of that energy, because I love how they overlap and are kind of woven together. And so, we're starting with the gate of sexuality this week, which is wind over water in the I Ching, and also known as dispersion. And in the gene keys, that is the gift of intimacy. So they're all interwoven, but as I just talked about with Virgo, what words we use matter a lot because of our associations with those words from our past or from society. It's really easy to have a certain association with a certain word. And so I like to include all of these different tellings of these energies that date back to the original hexagrams of the I Ching, because of how they can really provide, just the word itself can provide a really different insight into that energy that is kind of similar but a little bit different. So that is gate 59, and then gate 40 from Wednesday through Sunday is the human design gate of aloneness, which is thunder over water, or liberation in the I Ching. And in the gene keys, it has the gift of resolve. So I won't go into all the rest, but we have gate 64, gate 47, gate 6, and gate 46 coming up in Virgo season. And in the astrosomatics.substack blog, I've included all of that information, as well as on Instagram. You can find the 6 human design gates of Virgo season if you want to look ahead. You can find me on Instagram at Cycles of Time Podcast or at astro.somatics. So getting into gate of sexuality, gate 59, the very intimate gate that we're in for Monday and Tuesday of this week. As I wrote about last week, an article that I sent out to my Substack subscribers, and I wrote for the astrology collective Astrum Opus. It was as my sun enters Virgo article, and I wrote that Virgo is a mutable sign that transitions us from the personal half of the year to the transpersonal or collective half of the year. From signs that are focused on the self, which are Aries through Leo, to signs that focus on our interdependence with others and with the world around us. And that's Libra through Pisces, that are transpersonal signs. So Virgo is the last sign of the personal half of the zodiac. And so she is starting to be self-reflective and thinking about how her sovereign selfhood is part of the greater collective picture. The mutable sign carries us from one season to another, and Virgo and Pisces are the two signs that carry us from the personal to transpersonal for Virgo, and the transpersonal into the personal for Pisces. Very intimate is drawing from the gate of sexuality, which is about Virgo's intimacy and deep focus on relationality with her environment and the people around her. So after the season of the lion's self-expression, Virgo is the first sign of the wheel of the year to really start to consider the other. And so she's a mutable sign, which means a changing sign. And that means that there's a kind of equal consideration on what's up ahead, which is the other. Libra is all about partnership. And what came before, which is the self-expression of the lion. And she's right in the middle, the Virgin, saying, okay, there's a little bit of this, a little bit of other, a little bit of where do I belong in that? And so I just really love thinking about kind of the duality of this time of year where we're really able to be in reflecting on the selfhood and looking forward to the merging with others. Last Thursday, I spent the first day of Virgo season, which was also the first day of the Gate of Sexuality, Gate 59, really doing a lot of Virgo-y stuff. It was kind of funny to me because all summer I had not wanted to do any of these house projects that had been piling up, and I have a dry erase board by my door that has just all kinds of stuff that I could do. But there was always some adventure calling this summer, or, going to the pool or whatever it was that seemed a lot more appealing. But first day of Virgo season, right on cue, I woke up with just a lot of energy, and my partner and I just decided to tackle some of these projects. So I touched up the paint on my kitchen cabinets that had rubbed off, and organized the junk drawer, and fixed and painted the back door. Where my dog has scratched it to pieces and things like that, that are maintenance and not necessarily moving the needle towards a wow factor, but just, the maintenance and the pruning and the fixing and the painting and the touch-ups, very Virgo stuff. So it really felt actually quite amazing to dive into that work and to pay attention to and care for the little things in my day-to-day environment that are subtly bothersome every single day. Reaching for a glass and being God, that paint has rubbed off near the knob and it just doesn't look put together or demure, So they kind of all got overlooked though during the hotter months of just striving in spring and kind of reaching towards starting new things and then just settling into summer's heat. But here we are, Virgo. And I got to Virgo it up alongside with my partner, Jackson, who was building a cold plunge lid and fixing the frame on the door and just doing some backyard maintenance. And so not only did it feel kind of accomplishing to do those little things, but also intimate. My partner had mentioned wanting to do some house projects earlier in the summer, and I always found it more fun things to do, and he kept saying, well, it would feel really good to put some energy and some love into the house. So when the stars finally aligned to cut and paint some wood, it felt really nice to connect with him through showing love to the place that we call home, where we spend every day of our lives. And I already spoke about Gate 59, this gate that encompasses the Leo-Virgo cusp, in last week's episode. So if you want to listen to more on this, you can skip to 55 minutes in that episode to hear that part. So I'm not going to go into too much detail again here about the gate of sexuality and intimacy, but I did read a quote from Richard Rudd's 64 Ways that struck me in relation to my lived experience of intimacy over the past week. So I will share that with you, really relating to the intimacy of doing, just shared tasks together, for example, the kind of mundane things that we don't often give a lot of reverence to. So the quote from Richard Rudd is, "Look at your relationships right now. They are exactly what you need. Is there any residual, untransformed energy anywhere? This is where your work is. Intimacy is actually a very internal experience, ironically. We become intimate with our own heart, and then we can become honest with another heart. We need to be really careful here because honesty needs to be balanced with kindness. Intimacy is a blend of honesty and kindness. We don't need to pour all our suffering out into someone we love. Sometimes that is too much. And we don't need to share everything all the time. Sometimes our heart has to decide how much to share. So much of our transformation takes place in the silent chemistry field of the relationship itself. That is the Tantra. We have to transform inwardly every piece of trauma that is triggered inside of us. This doesn't mean we can't talk about it. Of course we can, if that helps for us to care for ourselves more. But also intimacy is about listening to the other, really listening deeply through our heart. Intimacy is really the byproduct of inner transformation. It isn't something we do. Intimacy is something that is revealed from within. As we become more intimate inside our own heart, so we let go of needing another person to change. That is the magical moment. That is when unconditional love comes into the game. When the other person feels that disinterested love from you, they are finally free to feel their own trauma. Even if they continue to project it onto you, it doesn't have to affect you. You will then no longer close your heart or be triggered by their projections. Only then can true healing begin. So again, that's an excerpt from the 64 Ways by Richard Rudd, which are kind of personal contemplations on the 64 energies. And this passage, to me, it struck me in a really personal way because as I'm doing these house projects that I've resisted with my partner and also reaching the 4-year mark of my relationship, I'm feeling the settling into that type of love, that so-called disinterested love that allows each of us to be in our own process, but know that we're still loved, in the silence, in the mundane, without the inherent projections of newer relationships. And 4 years in, it feels really beautiful and vulnerable and lovely to be in that type of intimacy and to discover these new definitions of intimacy. And it felt really palpable this week. It's also interesting because I've been seeing a lot of posts online asking if ex-lovers are coming back into our lives with Mercury retrograde. That's kind of a thing that tends to happen during both Mercury and Venus retrograde periods. And I kind of brushed those off, like, that's not going to happen with me. But over the past week, I did hang out with 2 of my exes. My ex-husband, who was picking up my daughter, ended up staying and having a meal. And my college ex-boyfriend was passing through town, so I got some pho with him. And it's interesting because, I was together with them for 10 years and 5 years respectively. And now 5 years have passed since my divorce. And it's been 15 years since my college relationship ended. So this week I found that I'm able to look at these relationships as integral pieces of my past, but not feel the same triggering or nostalgic sensation that I have before, where I was kind of caught up in pain and hurt and entanglement. It really felt this week like there was a clear kind of like, okay, you were there and very meaningful in a part of my life, but it's no longer as entangled at all. And I was also able to notice through hanging out with them how much I've grown and changed in my own self since I was in those relationships that were in my 20s and early 30s. And I really feel that through a lot of that inner work, as Richard Rudd was talking about, that self-intimacy of really having the space and being witnessed by another person to live through your own traumas and your own pain and not have to only be projecting outward into another. I felt that, this intimacy being a byproduct of inner transformation really showed up in how I was able to reflect on those relationships and see how my current relationship now, I just feel like I have a much more potential for a deeper intimacy than I ever have in the past because of the inner transformations that I've had the space to process for the first time in my adult life over the past few years. And, maybe I think the pandemic and the lockdown actually helped to create that space for a lot of people. And it's like the inner work is coming up for a lot of people, where before it was like, go, 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 one thing to the next. So I think that is very poignant timing with this gate 59 of intimacy mixed with Mercury retrograde. Just like, here we are. They're showing up. I'm curious how this gate showed up for you all last week and over the weekend. We're still in it today and tomorrow, Monday and Tuesday. And then we're going to move on to the gate of aloneness, gate 40, for the rest of the week. So I'll jump into the gate of aloneness, which I'm calling very liberated. The second gate of Virgo season is aloneness, and it brings forth images of the Hermit tarot card for me. This is one of my favorite cards, spanning multiple decks. I just love the imagery of it. It draws me in. And the Hermit suggests that there's a phase of introspection where we're drawing attention inward and looking for answers within. It's an image of classically a man with a cloak heading out into the wilderness, holding up a lantern in front. And there's a lot of modern versions as well of just a person in their room with their laptop and their cat on their bed, just being in their own space. And so this card is actually associated traditionally with Virgo. And again, Virgo is that last personal sign of the zodiac wheel that's on the liminal edge between the relationship with the self and the relationship with others. And so Virgo season contains energies, and, the human design gates reflect this, of both relational energy, which would be sexuality and intimacy, and the gate of friction, which is coming up, kind of about how we overcome and work through conflict. And then it also contains gates of retreating and self-reflection, which would be this gate of aloneness, the gate of confusion and imagination that's coming up, the gate of realization. And then the final gate of Virgo season is going to be determination. And this is the gate that also is on the cusp with Libra. And determination is known as rising up in the I Ching, and it's associated with finding delight in what we've discovered in this inward and outward ebb and flow kind of process. So it strikes me that as a mutable sign, the energies within Virgo season are also very mutable and changeable, going inward, going outward, working through relationship difficulties, getting intimate with ourselves so that we can get intimate with others, and reflecting on ourself within relationship to the other before we merge it all in Libra season. As a little tangent, I always think about the zodiac wheel ecologically. It's my favorite thing to do. And I love to think about Aries through Virgo seasons as the seasons of living plants, which would be the sprout, the flower, the pollen, the fruit, the honey, the harvest. And then the second half of the wheel, which is Libra through Pisces, represents the part of the plant life cycle that is death and decay and compost. And these are processes that are happening underground as the living beings from the seasons of life merge back in with the soil. And the soil is the material that's made up of life from years and decades and centuries gone by. And that process, that visual of life returning back to death, and Virgo being the last sign of life, the personal signs, the personal months are focused on the growth of individual plants from individual seeds. And the fall and winter months, that are the composting death months, are about merging and combining with the other, which is that soil, that collective consciousness of the soil. So, here at the end of summer, Virgo, who knows she's about ready to drop seed and leaf and flower into the melting pot of soil for the next 6 months. She's still, though, in this moment, intact and whole. The flowers, when I walk around the neighborhood, the flowers this season are drying on their stems, but they're still popping with color. And there's peaches on my tree and rose hips growing and apples. that are reaching this point of ripened perfection, just wholeness for harvest season. So Virgo is on the cusp where vibrant life must inevitably merge with all-encompassing death, but she's still whole and still sovereign and still one unto herself. And I love this phrasing, one unto herself, because the translated meaning of virgin in ancient Greek is not what we think of Virgo or virgin today. It's not unsexual or chaste or prude or not having had sex. It really means in ancient Greek one unto herself, or referring to an unmarried woman who is self-governed, free, empowered, and whole within her own being. So it's here that I really like to bring in the energy of gate 40, the gate of aloneness, because I think the word aloneness oftentimes can strike us as lonely, like alone. I don't want to be alone, but there's something about sovereignty in aloneness. There's something about being whole into our own being that is really the deeper meaning of Virgo and the deeper association with both the ecology of the season and the historical meaning of the sign. In the original I Ching, hexagram 40 is known as thunder over water, or liberation, or deliverance and freedom from hardship. The elemental weather transitions from the previous gate of sexuality, gate 59, which was wind skimming over water, which disperses ripples in all directions. And it now, after that, is building up into thunder over water, kind of like a storm building above the watery abyss, where thunder and rain are clearing the atmosphere and releasing pressure, and a feeling of oppression is relieved. The written Chinese character for liberation is the symbol of loosening, like untying a knot or unraveling a complication. This hexagram denotes a condition in which the obstruction and difficulty of the preceding figure have been removed. So ecologically, I like to think of the corn in the field, the corn being very associated with Virgo, an ear of corn. And I like to think about this season before harvest, where the husks of the corn are being kind of loosened away from the fruit as the golden kernels get ready for the big autumn harvest. There's like a untightening of plant life right now, where it's all loosening just a little bit, enough to be picked and eaten and enjoyed. So gate 40, the gate of aloneness, navigates this intricate balance between solitude and self-reliance, being within a husk perhaps, and the responsibilities we hold within our communities. The gate underscores the vital importance of finding strength and renewal in moments of solitude and establishing healthy boundaries to safeguard over our personal space and needs. Being a little hermity this week is going to be okay. Maybe you've had some intimate revelation, some stuff has come up through the vulnerability of the gate of intimacy. I know it has for me. Being witnessed in vulnerable places it can bring up a lot. And so taking that energy from last week and the beginning of this week, and starting Wednesday through next Tuesday, really taking those gems and going inward a little bit and safeguarding your boundaries. There's also a certain breadwinner or provider energy in gate 40, which is kind of about working diligently to provide for a community that values and appreciates our efforts, and also just noticing that there's a need for rest and solitude after doing these, home improvement projects or community improvement projects. We need to return to ourselves this season of transitions to recuperate and maintain our own well-being. This gate also explores the dynamic tension between our roles as contributors to the collective and our inherent need for individuality and personal freedom. This gate teaches us that embracing periods of aloneness doesn't only allow us to recharge and reflect, but also empowers us to return to our communal roles with greater focus and determination. So it's a very empowering time of the year. This is a time when you might find it easy to forgive and forget, and when worries can wash away like water, and your heart can blossom open with less effort than it has recently. So there we have it. We have a couple of deep, profound gates to carry you into the season of the sovereign harvest goddess, the demure and sexy and mindful and liberated one. I don't think there are any good or bad gates or hexagrams. There's just the continual ebb and flow that all have their place and purpose. But in the I Ching, as well as human design, there are some subtle subtle judgments that I feel, especially in the I Ching, certain interpretations and renditions of it over time. There was a lot more cut and dry, kind of like, this is a welcome omen, and this is a very unwelcome hexagram, for example, when you're doing the divination practice with I Ching, either coins or the yarrow sticks that were used traditionally. There is a tendency for them to have been written about as welcome or unwelcome. And so I do want to let you know that this one, gate 40, is a very welcome omen in the divination and the I Ching. The gate of aloneness might sound lonely and not welcome, but it's definitely highly welcomed in the sense that it is a loosening energy and a coming to the wisdom and the sovereignty of our own power and our own beauty. So enjoy that welcomed energy. Welcome it in. There's been a lot of intensity over the past few weeks to round out August. That T-squares and full moons, and we're leading up into eclipse season, so it's not over yet. But this week, I recommend just leaning into that energy. And we also have a couple of astrological happenings this week that might add a sense of relief to the current energy as well. Tomorrow, there is a grand trine between Venus in Virgo, Uranus in Taurus, and Pluto at 0 degrees of Aquarius. And then Pluto is heading backwards in retrograde motion to enter Capricorn from September 1st to mid-November. So that's also happening this week. So basically, a grand trine that's happening between Uranus, Pluto, and Venus tomorrow on Tuesday is a harmonious flow of energy between 3 or more planets. And that means that they're all just working well together. The energy is flowing. With trines in astrology, the planets are all in the same element of the chart. So they're either all in earth, all in air, all in fire, or all in water. And this is always the case with trines. And so true to this season, this trine is happening in earth signs, Virgo, Capricorn, and Taurus. And with Pluto and Uranus in the mix, there's still definitely some themes of radical change and revolution and death and rebirth that we're feeling. But Venus is there completing that trine to offer a support, aligning it with our values, making the harmony flow between the rebellion and the revolution and the death and rebirth into kind of what it is that we value and prioritize. So the flowing energy of this trine this week could give a glimpse of positive and hopeful things that are being birthed into creation now. So you can use this week's intimate alone time, if you choose to accept the assignment, to brainstorm and find new flow states and create space to receive new downloads and inspiration. Then on Wednesday, Virgo's planetary ruler, who is the trickster Mercury, is going to be stationing direct in Leo and then headed in a direct motion towards the Virgin's amber waves of grain. This is happening on the same day that the sun transits into the gate of aloneness. So you can expect your solo journeys in the later parts of this week and beyond to have a lot less technical difficulties and maybe some far fewer run-ins with exes than you've experienced in the past few weeks when Mercury was retrograde. So hooray for that. Mercury's going direct. And now this is the time to get intimate with your deeply empowered and badass self. Harvest the gifts that spring and summer have bestowed upon you in their life-giving nature, and also to start to discern which relationships and projects are deserving of your precious attention and devoted reverence. But I would say with all of that, that's a kind of a heavy assignment, like harvest all the gifts and discern what's going forward. Like there's a lot of pressure this season. I feel like I want to get everything right. And so instead of being too obsessed with perfection and obsessed with your future plans, there's still time to indulge in some of the decadent peaches and apples from the trees that are abundant right now here in the Northern Hemisphere, and also just let those sweet juices run down your chin. Know that Virgos may be demure and mindful, but we can also be brat. And with that, have a gorgeous week ahead. Please share this episode, like and subscribe. If you like what you're hearing here and you're getting anything from it, I love comments and DMs. Curious if any of you have Virgo placements that are coming up ahead in the next several gates and how you relate to those. Next week will be entering my birthday week, so I'm excited to kind of go deep into my gate and my sun gate and see how confusing I can possibly be in the gate of confusion. But again, thank you for spending this time with me, and I look forward to talking to you again next week. Bye.